Welcome. You're watching The Big Question. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Did you know that the smartphone you're currently holding as you watch this show perhaps, whether it's the latest iPhone, Google Pixel or Samsung, there is a pretty high chance that it may have been made in India. That's right, made right here locally, as opposed to a situation a few years ago when phones were predominantly assembled in China or Vietnam. Why am I saying that? Well, because according to recent government data, 99.2% of all mobile phones which are sold in India today also happen to be made in India. That's a steep rise from 10 years ago when only 26% of phones which were being sold to us were manufactured locally. In fact, we're not just supporting local demand, we're also making for the world. Indian manufactured smartphones have now become the country's top exported item, surpassing traditional export staples like petroleum products and diamonds for the first time ever. In fact, smartphone exports have soared by 55% to $24.14 billion in 2024-25 when compared to the previous years. Big brands like Apple and Samsung are leading the charge, accounting for around 94% of India's smartphone exports, according to Counterpoint Research. Both are further ramping manufacturing in India, something which has gotten a further fillip with Donald Trump's recent tariff tsunami. In response to these tensions, Apple has said that the company will produce a majority of iPhones sold in the United States in India in the June quarter. Apple also wants to move 25% of all iPhone production to India in the next few years. In fact, Apple's shift has drawn the wrath of Mr. Trump, who said last week that he will ask Tim Cook to stop building plants in India. Despite that, Apple seems to continue its expansion plans, with its main manufacturing partner, Foxconn, investing $1.5 billion into its India unit. Similarly, Samsung too is evaluating a shift of some of its smartphone manufacturing from Vietnam to India owing to tariff-related trade disruptions, as is Google Pixel. So far, it has been an advantage thanks to China Plus One strategy, Trump tariff disruptions, and the government's PLI schemes. But uncertainty remains. With this deadline of the PLI scheme set to end in FY26, it remains to be seen whether the government will give an extension, and if they don't, will global players be willing to sustain the momentum in the absence of subsidies? Furthermore, the recent US-China deal, which saw Trump reducing tariffs on China by 115%, may also tip the scales back in China's favor and dash India's hopes of becoming the world's phone factory. India still relies heavily on China for raw materials and components used in phones, limiting Delhi's ability to fully capitalize on supply chain shifts. So this is why we're asking the big question today. Can India become the next global smartphone hub instead of China? And how do we make it happen? To speak on this, our first set of guests are Sunil Vachani, Executive Chairman at Dixon Technologies, and Pankaj Mohindru, Chairman, India Cellular and Electronics Association. I'm going to start the conversation with Mr. Vachani with the context that Dixon Technologies is, in a sense, the poster child of what success of the PLI scheme can look like. And a lot of what we see in terms of made in India and electronics is something that Dixon has been at the forefront of. With that said, Mr. Vachani, can we first start by contextualizing the sea change in manufacturing of these products in India?
Yeah, Tamanna, thank you for having me on the show. I think, you rightly said the context, and you very rightly pointed out that we have come a very, very long way as an industry, as a country. And I think if you recall the times, I'm talking about maybe about 20 years back, we were importing almost all the phones that were sold in the country. And to come to this stage, where now, as you rightly said, that mobile phone exports as a category is probably the top category for exports in the country. And almost in all the phones that are now sold in the country are made in India. So I think we have come a very, very long way as an industry, as a country. But I think the positive news is that this is just the beginning of the journey. So if you see our share of the overall electronics trade, the global trade, the total market, global market is roughly about $3 trillion. And we are roughly at just about 3% of this market. So this journey has just begun. And I think all of us have to strive together, come together, the industry associations, and make sure, that the vision the Honorable Prime Minister has set for us of $500 billion turnover in the next few years definitely comes true. And I, for one, am extremely positive that we are on the right track. I think these numbers are definitely achievable.
Yes.
We should be looking at an exports of mobile phones alone of roughly about $100 billion. I think few things need to come together, and I'll probably talk about it later in terms of a creation of a component ecosystem, creation of a design ecosystem, and now Indian manufacturers and Indian champions further investing in creating very large scale in building mega factories, and the whole focus now has to be looking at exports. I think we have kind of really addressed the domestic market, the issue of the import substitution, to ensure that anything that is consumed in India is made in India. And now is the time to look at global markets and be emerging as global champions, and making sure that India emerges as the next hub for manufacturing for the world.
Surely, it's a big sea change. But Mr. Vachani, I just want to get your view very quickly on those who say that, are we really making in India or are we assembling in India? How much of what we're putting together is Indian components? Is that a fair question, or is that a fair point?
No, absolutely. It's a fair question. And I'm sure this question also might have been asked at the time, let's say, Maruti Suzuki was entering the automobile market, right? I'm sure people must have asked that, this is only assembly happening. Where is the component ecosystem? And I think fast forward to now, you see our auto component sector is exporting to the most competitive global markets, and they're world leaders, right? So I think what is important is that you need to give time to the industry. And I think if you were to talk about the mobile industry specifically, so right now value addition is roughly around, let's say, less than 20%. And we see our neighboring countries at about 45 to 50%, right? And I feel that now with the new PLI scheme having been launched, especially for components, and industry really putting in large capacities of display assembly, camera module assembly, mechanicals, we should be reaching this figure very, very quickly. And I think we as a country would have done this, the fastest as compared to anyone in the world. So I think the point that I'm trying to make is that give time to the industry. We are on the right track, and we will reach the desired levels of value addition that is required, and also create millions of jobs, right? Because I think the first focus for any country has to be to create very large scale. Because wherever you have scale, the component industry follows there. And we've seen that example happening in Vietnam and other neighboring countries.
Okay.
So I think it's very important first we focus on scale, which is happening now, and now the component industry is going to follow.
No, absolutely. We are at that nascent stage. And, Pankaj Mohindra, so great to have you on the show. You've been a champion of this space, and we've been speaking for several years. There was a time when this seemed unimaginable, that you're largely you're largely solving for domestic consumption within the country itself. I'm going to start with the question that I just asked Mr. Vachani. Are we truly making in India right now?
You see this, the global smartphone ecosystem and the electronic ecosystem these are based on GVCs. So with a lot of specialization, for example, Taiwan is a very specialized semiconductor country. What we are achieving is a very big scale. We have crossed $60 billion now in smartphone assembly, and some of the sub-assemblies are also being produced here, like charger, battery pack, USB cable, mechanics. A large portion of mechanics is being done here. And also now, as Sunil said, display assembly, camera module, all of that is started happening here. So the scale has given us, it's lifted the industry up, and it is also giving motivation to the other verticals that this is possible. But now you see what has happened in the past, let's put it aside, because the Honorable Prime Minister has given a target of $500 billion. And this is a 400% increase over what we are doing now, in spite of the 450% growth, which has happened in the last 7-8 years.
Right.
So we have no time to think of what has happened in the past. We are relentlessly going after this 500 billion, and 500 billion is only possible by firing on all cylinders, right? This is a big scale. Smartphones will be approximately in the ecosystem will touch about 200 billion out of it, 130, 140 billion of output, and the rest of the sub-assemblies, etc., that will come into play. So we are very busy because you see, as that Tom Cruise song, "You've Taken My Breath Away." So we are in that state of mind now. We are, with total relentless passion going after 500 billion.
Wow.
So this patting ourselves on the back by what we've achieved in the past is not going to help. Now let's
No,
all
no,
forget this.
I agree with you. I mean, I don't have to be breathless while doing it. I like that. I like that reference. But coming down to the point of what those cylinders are, and Mr. Vachani, let me come to you on this. And this is something because we track your company's stock also closely. Though we're not talking about it today. The PLI scheme is the oxygen, right, of this entire success story. The PLI scheme is supposed to end in FY26. Now, suppose there's an extension or there's not an extension or whatever happens next. For how long do you think this ecosystem will have to have that boost? And is this ecosystem now at a stage where it doesn't need that boost, that subsidy from the government? Of course, initially you need it because otherwise how are you going to kickstart the whole process? But where are we right now?
Tamanna, it's not a subsidy, it's an investment.
It's a production-linked incentive scheme.
It is an investment from the government, from the taxpayers' money. It's public money which has been invested for the good of the country. It's not a subsidy.
I agree, sir. But, call it what you may. It is an incentive scheme. My question is now, you don't call it a subsidy, don't call it a subsidy. Some may not. The question remains the same. Are we at a stage where we can do without it, or how long will we need it, or does it need to continue? Your thoughts, Mr. Vachani.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, when we are answering that question, I think it's very important to look at and go into the background that why was this scheme really launched, right? And I think if we go back to the time, you would remember that we hardly had any scale in the country. There were very few manufacturers in the country. There were no GVCs which were operating out of the country. Exports obviously was negligible or even zero. And what was really the objective? So the way the scheme was structured, and I think, ICA played a very, very crucial role in that. And I think the scheme was designed beautifully. And really the objective was to create very large scale in the country so that we can be globally competitive. And that's why if you read the document of the scheme, the whole scheme is based on the premise on incremental sales. That means there was a base year, which was financial year 1920. And whatever the companies achieved beyond that, you would get that incentives or whatever you want to call it, only beyond what you were doing from the base year, right? So the whole concept was to create very large scale. The idea was to generate large employment in this industry because it is very labor intensive in spite of all the automation. The idea was to build Indian champions and eventually make sure that India as a country is a world leader as far as this product is concerned. So now fast forward to now and let's see, has it checked all the boxes?
Yes.
I would say we have created very large scale, right? As Pankaj ji pointed out, that now we are producing, mobile phones with almost about, let's say about $45 to $50 billion, right? We have created very, very large employment. Almost 1 million people have been directly employed in this sector. Indian champions have been born and now are doing phenomenally well, and now they'll become global champions in times to come. So I would say that the scheme has done exceedingly well, but I think a lot of work still needs to be done, right? As I mentioned, that India still needs to emerge as the largest hub, manufacturing hub for the world. There are a few disabilities that continue in terms of, let's say, logistics cost and some other disabilities that we know of. So I feel that now the new PLI scheme that has come for components and working along with this PLI for mobile phones, maybe for a few more years, will really do the trick and will really help us achieve the objectives that we have of, as I mentioned, of making India the next hub for manufacturing for the world.
Can we compete with China at some point, Mr. Vachani?
Well, the point is, I think, when you ask that question, you need to see that what sort of scale they have created, right? For how long they've been doing this, right? We really started this whole journey maybe about, let's say, 10 to 12 years back, right? So there's no doubt we have a lot of catching up to do. But I think you've got to see the positive signs, right? The kind of scale that we've achieved, the kind of productivity our Indian champions and global champions are achieving in the country, which shows that given the right kind of inputs to our manpower, to our workers, to our operators, they can be the best in the world. So I'm very confident yeah, that we can be the best in the world and compete with anybody in the world. But I think you got to be patient and you got to give us time.
Definitely. No, it's maybe we are getting ahead of ourselves. The fact is, there's no question about diminishing what we have achieved. The fact that we're making for India is huge. The fact that Apple wants to come in here is huge. The fact that Trump doesn't like it is also indicative of where that is going. I mean, if you're going to compare Make in America and Make in India, it's a no-brainer. Let me come to you on the question of now the US-China trade pact. And I know things like manufacturing and that kind of capital intensive investments don't happen because of one thing or the other. But nevertheless, with US and China in a trade pact, do you think it diminishes in any way what India could have done in that China plus one advantage?
Well, I think, first of all, the US-China, it's not really a trade pact that they've signed. It's not like a free trade agreement that has been signed. And second, the point that I wanted to make was, the kind of opportunity that exists in terms of the forthcoming, or at least the agreement that we look forward to between India and US, right? So as a country, we know that the US is a very large importer of products like mobile phones, even IT products. We believe almost $80 billion worth of IT products are imported into US every year. Almost $50 billion worth of mobile phones are imported into US every year. Even same numbers are with telecom. So there's no doubt it is a very, very large market. And I think in case India and US are able to come to an agreement on the free trade talks, I think it's going to be a huge opportunity because if India is a natural alternative, and if India were to able to capture even a small part of that, we're talking about absolutely huge numbers. So I think we are very excited about this possibility. I think I'll talk about this opportunity when it came, during Mr. Trump's first presidency when he came to power. And I think from that time, people started looking at an alternative to our neighbor, right? But unfortunately, that advantage went to Vietnam, right? And I think we saw a surge in exports in Vietnam of ICT products. But I've said this before, and I say it again, that I feel, and I'm very confident that this time around when this opportunity has come, the Indian industry is definitely better prepared. And I already mentioned it earlier that now we have a larger scale than what we used to have. We are now getting into components. We are now planning to get into the design ecosystem. And I feel if we put all these three together, our strengths together, definitely, this could be a very, very large opportunity for the country.
Oh, undoubtedly. And this is one which we cannot afford not to be in this space right now and continuously be an importer. I'm going to introduce to the conversation Prachir Singh. He's senior analyst at Counterpoint Research who tracks the space very closely as well. Prachir, hi. We've had a fascinating conversation on what has been working for the space. And the core question, of course, can India be the next smartphone hub? Can we beat China? I'm going to take that in two parts. Can we be the next global smartphone hub? What, in your view, do we need to do to ensure that we don't lose this opportunity?
Tamanna, we are already in a hub. So, so as per our data, if you see last year in 2024, India contributed to almost 18% of smartphone manufacturing. And this year, we can almost go to 25%. So if we talk about, is it a hub? Yes, it is a hub. Can we beat China? See, China has had a hard, a head start. So beating China at this point of time, it's a long path. The government's policies and the industry's intent is in the right path, and with the component scheme that the government has launched, the intent looks correct. Uh, so I believe we are on the right path, but beating China at this point of time, it's a tough task.
At this point of time, right? And as Mr. Vachani just said, they've had several decades ahead of us in building this. The question is, how do we make sure we get there, and what do we need to do? What is the strategy? Pankaj Mohindru, should we get obsessed about making every component ourselves? We are living in and I think this is an important point to understand. There is one school of thought, and we're seeing a bit of that in America right now, that let's also make the chips. Let's also do the innovation. Let's also have the manufacturing. Let's do everything here, here, here. Is that the way we should look at it? Pankaj Mohindru, I'd like your view on this.
Tamanna, we have one single objective, 500 billion, right?
We'll get there.
That's a single objective.
We'll get there.
That's a
At this
single
pace,
objective.
we're getting there.
अर्जुन की आंख सिर्फ उस चीज पे है 500 बिलियन. सेकंड, टू हिंदी idioms I'll tell you कि अगर हाथी रखने होते दरवाजे बहुत बड़े करने पड़ते हैं, right? So 500 billion is a big boys target where GVCs and Indian champions have to get created. So you need policies and regulations and ease of doing business, everything. All ducks have to be lined up.
No, you have to explain GVCs for my viewers. We use these terms, but let's simplify this, because this is something everyone's very interested in. How do we create GVCs? What are GVCs?
We don't create GVCs. GVCs have to participate here. A GVC is like Dell or like Apple, which is a lead firm, and a whole supply chain follows them. So when they participate in your economy, the economy shines, because 92% of the global electronic trade is in the hand of GVCs, and 70 to 75% of complete international trade is in the hand of GVCs. India has very little participation from GVCs across sectors. Like Colgate Palmolive is a GVC, P&G is a GVC. These are GVCs. Gillette is a GVC. The whole ecosystem. They are the lead firms and the GVCs. Now the GVC, the lead firm, is the mother hen, and everything else operates under that. China did that, and they produced their champion companies also. Second important thing, Tamanna, the second Hindi idiom is, दूसरे के चिता पे हाथ नहीं सेकते, right? Today, we are confident about smartphones because whatever geopolitical crossfire is going on, because we have a fundamental strength, which we created over 7-8 years. Today, the same thing is happening in hair bands, right? Same opportunity, but we are not able to produce hair bands. So every industry has to work deeply and create a base for the nation in that, whether it is Christmas trees, or it is electronic toys, or it is, innocuous products, which are run of the mill, which China produces probably 25, 30 million SKUs. We have to become an alternative base for that.
Sure.
Every sector has to participate
I
in this manufacturing revolution.
I want to get the practitioner's view. When we started our conversation, Mr. Vachani, you talked about some of the challenges, or I would say not even challenges, but things that we need to work on, what we need in the ecosystem to make it happen. First of all, do we need to stop obsessing about having every component in India and focus on what matters? Maybe innovation, design?
So I think, Pankaj ji has inspired me to, use another couplet and idiom. And I think that by the famous poet Victor Hugo, who said that no power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. So there is no doubt that this is our time, India's time has come, right? To your point, that what do we really need to do to make sure that this comes faster? I think there is no doubt that we need to strengthen our component ecosystem. Because the value addition that we have in mobile phones is extremely low right now. Of course, in other product categories, of course, right now we talk about mobile phones, but if you look at other product categories like home appliances, like products like air conditioners and refrigerators, viewers will be very happy to know that the value addition is as high as 75%. right? So I think we need to bring that kind of similar value addition across product categories. So focus on the component value addition, component ecosystem, focus on the reducing the logistics cost disability, focus on ease of doing business, and finally, as I said, let's continue that focus on building very, very large scale, because according to me, that is the most important element for global competitiveness.
That's really well said. We have to focus on the scale. We need to focus on what next for global competitiveness. What is the one thing, Mr. Vachani, that you would want to see in terms of ecosystem support?
So I think, as far as the government and industry alignment is concerned, thanks to ICN, there is, I think, excellent alignment. The government is really listening to the voice of the industry. So whatever feedback one has shared in the past, I think you see that most of the things, most of the boxes are getting checked, right? But I think one thing that I would particularly like, and I think there is perfect alignment between me and Pankaj also on this, that if now we need to focus on creation of a design ecosystem. So just the way, there was a call given by our Honorable Prime Minister, this is maybe about 10 years back, that let's make in India, let's make India the hub for manufacturing for the world. I think a similar call needs to come on let's design in India besides making in India, right? Because I feel that India has huge strength in design capabilities. And if we combine our strength of large pool of manpower, skilled manpower, our cost structures and the design capabilities, I think this combination will be unbeatable. Yeah. So I think that call really needs to come now on let's design in India, and that call needs to follow, with some actions and some policies and how we can help our startups, our MSMEs, to invest money into designing of products.
Yep, that's the next bit. And of course, a Kickstarter will come in the form of a PLI scheme here and there, but it has to be an overview, a vision that this is where we need to go. We saw that innovation in our defense industry, for example. If there is a clear-minded view on keeping tech and innovation first. But a fantastic conversation. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us on this edition of The Big Question. It's truly been a special one. We've asked the question today on whether India can be the next global smartphone hub. The resounding answer is why not? So that's all we have on this episode. Thank you so much for watching. And we're keen to hear your feedback, what you'd like to see on the show. We're listening.